Call the meeting to order. In accordance with 940 CMR 29.10, remote participation adopted by the Greater Lowell Technical School Committee, April 17, 2014. Committeeman O'Hare, Committeeman Sheehan, and Student Representative Karen Vinal will be participating at tonight's meeting remotely. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. O'Hare?
Mr. O'Hare?
Roll call, Judge.
Mr. O'Hare? Mr. Tatsias?
Here.
Mr. Gigi?
Here.
Mr. Getchia?
Yeah.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yeah.
Mr. Bahu? Mr. LeMay?
Yeah.
Mr. Moran?
Yeah. We're going to be suspending the public appearance portion and going right into the meeting. Now I'd like to turn the meeting over to the student representative, Karen Vinal, to give her student report.
Our remote student activities have been up and running for a few weeks now, and we've had a lot of student involvement already. The Math Club has been meeting weekly, and they're happy to say that our club size has doubled and is continuing to grow. They have been brainstorming ideas for possible math competitions and have introduced bi-weekly challenges that result in badge earnings. The peer mentoring program has completed the training process for the upper class mentors. They have reached out to the school counseling department with information about the program and a referral form for anyone on their caseloads that they think will benefit from the program. Their next steps are to recruit freshmen to join and begin to match the mentors with mentees. In the Guided Club, students have been meeting weekly. Students are starting to plan remote activities and have discussed the reasons they believe this is so important during this COVID time. Members have talked about their faith and how it has helped them deal with remote learning, and they shared strategies for keeping calm. Anime Club has gotten off to a flying start. Members are actively working out the focus of this year's club. The general consensus seems to be on developing a place for people with similar interests to gather. They would like to virtually tour Gilby Studios in Japan to see their first anime together during next week's session. National Honor Society and National Technical Honor Society is beginning its application process for new members. The review process will take about 8 weeks. Their first meeting with current members was this Wednesday with a focus on electing this year's officers. The Freshman Activities Committee had an overwhelming number of students participate in the first virtual after-school meeting, with approximately 40 students attending their last meeting. We're planning to host a virtual Kahoot-a-thon this week with chances for students to win prizes. This year, we're piloting a science-based club with a volunteer advisor. The Bio Club is meeting remotely every week with these club activities determined by the students. And finally, GLTHS has been meeting weekly with officer teams to plan this year's calendar of events for students. We plan to have a full range of activities this year, including remote community service and technical competitions. Next week, our student officers will be attending a virtual version of the Fall State Leadership Conference hosted by the State Association. In athletics, both the boys and girls varsity cross-country teams had impressive victories in their meeting at Shawson Tech last Thursday, November 5th, with Albert Ferreras and Haley Shenzay placing first in each of their races. The girls and boys varsity cross-country teams ended their seasons with wins over Neshoba Valley Tech on Monday, November 9th. The final scores were 16-43 for the girls and 19-35 for the boys. Both teams ended with a 5-1 record for the season. On Friday, November 6th, girls varsity soccer played against Lowell Catholic, and the result was a 0-0 tie. Freshman goalie Julia Canaro, for diverse varsity shutout, made 9 saves. Eliza Somm, Rebecca Cawthorn, Ari Hernandez, and Victoria Garcia played well. The team finished the shortened season with 5 wins, 3 losses, and 2 ties. The varsity boys soccer team played against Full Catholic under the lights on Thursday, November 5th, and they came away with a 4-1 win, avenging on an earlier season 4-2 loss to the Crusaders. Playing well were sophomore David Asapino, freshman Gabriel Favoto, sophomore Sam Sultani, sophomore Antonio Martins, and freshman Luigi Pereira. The team finished up their shortened season on November 7th with a 1-1 tie against Essex Tech. The boys team finished with an overall record of 5-4-1. Varsity golf finished their third ever varsity season by competing in the CAC Championship on November 5th. The 4 golfers representing the Griffins were freshmen Jake Torpy and seniors Tim Gass, Mike Cook, and Jacob Lambert.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes. Approval, yeah. Approval, to approve the minutes for the October 15th meeting. George Statius by Kempton Gigi. Roll call.
Mr. O'Hare?
Here.
Mr. Tatsias?
Here.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yeah.
Mr. Bahu? Mr. LeVey?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. Report of the treasurer. Move to waive the reading. Mr. Lemay,
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
seconded by Mr. Getchia.
Mr. O'Hare?
So
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu? Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. Need a motion to approve the expenditures of $4,648,508.94. Mr. Tatsias, seconded by Mr. Gigi.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu? Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. Report of general counsel, not tonight. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item on the agenda, I would like to inform the committee that Greater Lowell Technical High School has been awarded a targeted assistance grant in the amount of $15,000 to support improving outcomes for our Asian subgroup based on our 2019 accountability status. The second item on the agenda is 2 donation approvals. The first approval is to accept a $10,000 donation from CVS. This donation was recently increased from the initial amount of $5,000, and it's to support scholarships for graduating seniors. I'd just like to take a moment to thank Jonathan De Silva, an alumni and executive at CVS for their partnership and their continued support of our students, specifically with our cooperative education program. So thank you to CVS. So I'm looking for approval of the donation of $10,000.
Need a motion.
Move approval. Second.
Mr. O'Hare?
Mr. Getchia.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu? Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
The second donation is from John Driscoll, who would like to donate his 1999 Dodge Dakota to the Automotive Technology Program as an educational tool with an estimated value of $2,185. I'm looking for approval.
Need a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Gigi.
Mr. O'Hare?
Mr. O'Hare?
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu? Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
The next item on the agenda is the cooperative education report, which is included in your package. We currently have 65 senior students participating in cooperative education as of October 31st, which represents 12% of the class of 2021. But I'm happy to report this evening that as of today, November 19th, we now have 78 students, senior students out on co-op with 12 pending. We are still waiting to hear on the cooperative education status for our juniors. And we are working with the state advocating for our juniors, but we have not heard anything back yet.
Jill, on the juniors, when are they eligible to go out?
So the juniors would be eligible to go out at the end of the second walking period. So that's at the end of January.
Okay.
We're hoping to hear something by then from the state, but we are advocating for our juniors to be able to go out.
Okay.
Okay. The next item on my agenda, I'd like to begin a discussion in regards for the need to increase the LPN tuition. This increase is due to the allowable student-teacher ratio in the facilities where our students are currently performing their clinicals. The ratio has changed from a 10-to-1, from a 10-to-1 ratio to a 5-to-1 ratio. And this would require the need for more instructors to be able to teach clinical. So I'd like to call Mr. Knight, our business manager, and Christine Messina, our director of post-secondary education, up to talk a little bit about some of the options in regards to the increase.
Just take that chair, Chris. Oh, come on.
So I prepared a memo in the packet for everyone that breaks out the tuition in 3 different scenarios as I've seen it, or as we've looked at it. As Superintendent Davis was saying, we've seen quite the increase in cost, specifically around that change in ratio of the student to teachers in the clinical program. That student instructional cost, or the instructional cost, is roughly about $121,000. Additionally, not being able to do in-person testing that's required throughout the program has forced us to go to an online program, and with the frequency of exams that are required, we get charged on a per seat, per exam basis. So the testing in this program ends up being roughly about $60,000 annually. And then we also had to make some investment in some simulation software where some of the hands-on teaching couldn't take place in person because of COVID-19, and that simulation software was about $10,000 annually as well. So we're seeing roughly about a $191,000 cost increase to the program. So the 3 scenarios that I've looked at are where we stack based on similar programs in the state, tuition-wise, for in-district, out-of-district, and out-of-state students. And I looked at initially how much of our revenue, based on each student group and the population within those student groups for the current year, and the tuition rates, is generated by each group in-district, out-of-district, and out-of-state, respectively, and then assigned a percentage of the total revenue to each group, and then the total of that cost. So if you go to what the percentage of that revenue is by each subgroup, and then taken the total $191,000 increase in cost and divided it based on that percentage. So as a percentage of revenue, as in the current model, increasing not evenly, but I guess percentage-wise equally across the groups as they stand today. So if you look at the 3rd page of my memo, sorry for the eye chart, but the top scenario that's highlighted in yellow shows our current tuition rates for each subgroup. And I've separated fees out of all of these rates just because they do vary a little bit based on the programs. But then beneath that in the green, what we've done is we've taken the total percentage of revenue based on each group and based on our 2021 enrollment for each of the tuition paying groups, and come up with the percentage of tuition overall that's generated by each group. And then taken the $191,000 and divided it or multiplied it by that percentage to see what percentage would keep us in line with that for each group. And then the increase per pupil of tuition that would then require from each of the subgroups. And then the total increased tuition number. And then if you go to the fourth page of the memo, I've showed you where we stand currently from a stack ranking perspective of similar programs based on, in the top half of this, or the top chart here, our in-district tuition, where we stand. We're the third lowest, or tied for third lowest currently. And then beneath that is the out-of-district tuition, where we stand currently. Again, we're fourth lowest, or tied for fourth. And then if you flip to the next page, if we went with this option 1 scenario of increasing as a percentage of revenue per student, where that would move us to in the stack rank. In this case, it's 5th for in-district, and then out-of-district, we would move to 6th. The second option I created is an option of just taking the $191,000 increase and just applying it to out-of-district or out-of-state students, and what their tuition, what the increase would be based on the number of out-of-district and out-of-state students we have from that $191,000, which is roughly that $5,026.32 number. That's in gray, about midway down the third sheet, again outlining the 3 options. And then if you flip to the chart beyond that option 1 stack ranking we just looked at, it's the option 2. And in this scenario, we would stay at that tied for third place for the in-district total tuition. And then on the out-of-district, this would move us up to 10th out of about 14 programs that we had comparable costs for. And then the third scenario that I looked at was just taking that $191,000 and dividing it equally across all groups. So an increase of about $2,387.50 per pupil. And then what the total tuition cost would be at that point. And then again, there's a set of 2 charts at the back of my memo here that would show you on this option. If we were to take that, you would move to 6th for your in-district tuition cost across the comparable programs, and then the out-of-district cost also moves to 6th as well in that scenario. So those are the 3 options I looked at for how to sustain the program. The costs that we mentioned in the beginning of the memo are costs that we're currently experiencing. We had the hiring of the new instructors for the clinical portion. Luckily this year there was a CARES Act grant that came for specifically the post-secondary education portion of the school. So just the LPN program for us, which is going to cover those costs. But looking to years outward, that would be a hit to the program and certainly force us to a deficit operating annually.
Mike, there's a lot of work that's gone into this. Thank you so
Well-
much. The first question I think I have is this something that's going to be ongoing, or is this until COVID ends?
I can't say specifically because I don't speak to the clinical sites, but it sounds like from our Christine and my discussion, it sounds like, I guess, maybe once you have a taste of the good life, you don't go back. So it seems like it will be something that stands moving forward. They haven't made any mention of this being a temporary measure at all.
This $191,000 increase, is that based on COVID, or is it based on?
That's all based on COVID. So the testing we used to do in person. So, well, the clinical, the 121,000 has to do with the teacher ratio. So that has directly to do with COVID changing that ratio, or the facilities where we're working changing that ratio, forcing that cost. The testing and simulation software, assuming we can get all the students back in the building. Those are things that we could forego. So there could be a potential swing on that cost of 70,000.
So the 191 is sort of, well, the 70,000 would be there for good.
The 70 is variable. That would go with COVID. The other way around. The 121 it
121
seems like
yeah.
would be ongoing, regardless of
The
of COVID or
121
not.
ongoing. And does the night program, Christine, maybe this is a question for you. Does the night program, is it currently operating at a profit? Is there extra money every year? Is there any extra money that sort of sits in the fund and sort of gets moved as years progress?
I can give you that too.
Okay.
If you don't have. So I did look at the last 6 years or so. About in 2015, 16, and 17, the program was operating at a surplus, roughly 100 to 120, 30,000 annually. That at that time we weren't charging, or we weren't charging all of the, or we were charging all of the administrative salary and the administrative assistant salary to the program. In years 18 and 19, we stopped charging the salary for the administrator and the administrative assistant to the program, and then the profits also decreased through that time period. Actually, in 2018, we took a loss, and in 2019, it was back about that $100,000 mark. Last year, it was roughly 78,000 or so that it made as a surplus. But once you factor in the salary of the administrator, even the previous 2 years would have been unprofitable, roughly by about 120, 30, 150. You'd probably be taking a loss of about $100 or $40,000 to $50,000 in 2019, and in 2020, it would have been a more significant loss, probably closer to 80,000.
How can we shave some of these costs? The $191,000, is that a must? Because it sounds like COVID is, part of that cost.
So we had this discussion earlier, and unfortunately, clinical sites aren't opening their doors begging for student teaching or student teaching opportunities to take place. So looking at where we're at geographically, I don't see a way that we could avoid the $121,000 number. Like I said, if we can get the students back in the building, at least we can start administering tests the way we had previously, and potentially get rid of some simulation software. So I think 70 of that is potentially savable. But that 121 number, the biggest chunk of this sounds like it's here to stay.
Okay, and based on these numbers that you proposed, is this included the 121 number or the 191 number?
This is the 191 number across the board.
Okay,
So it would be less if we get to a point where we can get all the students back in the building.
right. And I'm one that's thinking, we're at the end of the day pretty much an inner city school district. We have a lot of students come from Lowell, Drake, and Tingsboro, and I don't want to burden them because we are here for the students and here for people to grow and give themselves good opportunity. So the idea of maybe 191 this year and then possibly assuming that as profit later doesn't really sit well with me. So could we sort of possibly bring this to like the 121 number and start to work from there?
Yeah.
And maybe eat as a district, eat that cost of $70,000 this first year. And if COVID keeps on, shutting things down, it's going to keep costing us $70,000, then we could revisit it next year.
Yeah.
Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, that's certainly an option as well.
No, I have a question.
Sure.
It looks like, and we might be capped, we can only have 80 students in the program because we're really doubling up with teachers, and that's a big part of it.
Thereabouts. I
Or
can't
can we
speak
bring
to-
in more students?
The classroom only fits about 40 safely.
That's with COVID, right?
No.
No,
That's without. Okay.
no. That's just, we have like the biggest room in the building, and it's 40 students.
Per day.
So
right?
we're pretty much
days,
capped
and
by
then
the
40
number of
for
students then,
evenings.
right? So we can't lower the per student cost.
No, I don't think there's an opportunity to increase revenue by decreasing or increasing
Adding more
student count,
students.
you're saying?
Because you're gonna have to add more teachers then.
We would just see I think it would actually probably become exponential the opposite direction because of the amount of instructors that we would need to support that. That, and I know there isn't a huge waiting list for this program, and correct me if I'm wrong, they have to test in. It's a difficult test. It's not one that everyone that signs up passes and gets admitted to. So on an annual basis, I think from our previous discussions, if we were turning away a handful, 5, that was probably the most.
Yeah, because I'm reading in the first paragraph, we have a 10-to-1 program generally. So that's 10 students to one teacher, and now we're down to a 5-to-1. So we need these 2 teachers going forward into the future.
And well, that's just in
Yes.
the clinical side. So it's
That's a clinical,
actually,
those are clinical instructors. There's a 10-to-1 ratio, which is the state Board of Nursing requirements, but we were luckily able to get access to some of the nursing homes in the area under the Genesis Corporation, and their rules were 1 to 5. So now I've had to hire 4 to 5 new clinical instructors. My students are only getting half of their experience. So 1 week, 5 of them will be in clinical, and the other 5 will be remote. So we need teachers remotely giving them clinical. It's called remote clinical to kind of offset that. So they're getting half the time, but I spoke to the DON, just saying, how's things going now? I need to think about the future because I'm starting testing again for next August class in December. So I need to put tuition rates on the school's website. And I asked her if she could foresee that 5-to-1 being changed. And she was like, no.
Thank you.
Understanding somewhat the variables and the fact that it affects all the districts. Christine, do you see anything down the road that gives you grave concerns or any areas of concern? Say next year or year after, or is it all COVID related?
COVID's definitely deriving everything.
You don't see anything mandated after the fact, or say once a vaccine and it's rectified that and we go back to normal, or if it is normal, do you have any concerns initially that?
I don't foresee it going back to 10-to-1 because I can just, that's a lot to put on a small nursing home floor. It's 10 students.
Yep.
To one instructor, and you've got the staff, and you've got the elderly population, which obviously is very you have to be very careful with. So I don't, especially for next year, I don't foresee any changes.
Okay.
Christina, how far, what's it costing a student if they went to a private college or university to take this program?
That I don't know.
I started
It
to look
depends
at.
on what school you go to.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's say UMass Lowell.
I don't know specifically UMass Lowell. I started looking at community college tuition rates. So I looked at MCC and I think Quincy Community College both have a program. And it looks like it's stretched out a little bit longer than ours. Ours is a single year. Theirs, I think, requires 2 because you've got a lot of prereqs and other things that come with that. But even the annual tuition at any of those, or I think the cheaper of the 2 was Middlesex Community. And I want to say it was $7,049-ish roughly per year. So they'd be looking at closer to a $14,000 to $15,000 cost for the similar program.
And do they get everything that we offer, Christine? Do they get the
Well,
clinical?
Middlesex gives you an associate's degree in nursing. We give practical nursing. We're licensed practical nursing, so it's 2 different.
They both, when they both graduate, do they both essentially get the same rate of pay?
No.
Who gets the higher rate of pay? The
That's the RN.
associates?
We do.
So Middlesex is an RN program.
Yeah, associate's degree RN program.
Do they graduate Middlesex with an RN? They do not.
They do. So with associate's degree RN, yes. Yep.
Would we be competitive if we raised the cost to the out-of-district students as well as to the out-of-state students?
That's going to be
Option 3.
option
Option 3.
two.
Option
Sorry.
2?
Yep, which keeps our in-district
Yes,
stack rank
yes,
about
that's option 2. That's
third.
correct.
So option 3, we would be 10th out of 14, roughly.
But 38% of the revenue comes from
Out of state.
out of district.
How about out of state?
Out of state is only 20%.
So you're looking at the top number, you're seeing the 38% and the 20%. Firstly, and I hate to grab onto this, but we know that I asked a lot of questions about this over the years. Can we reduce the 191 to 121? Can we eat that cost that's, associated to COVID this year? Is it in our budget? Do we have $70,000?
This year is covered. There's a CARES Act
There's
grant.
Here's that.
So it's covered.
Okay.
But to answer the question, yes, next year if we went with the 121, we could sustain that. The program has had successful years in the past, so we do have a balance in there. We could probably sustain 3, maybe 4 years.
So could we consider maybe doing that for 1 year and not put such a burden on the students?
However, what I'm hearing you say that if COVID doesn't go away, we could still have some of those additional costs.
We could always revisit it.
But there could be some care.
Absolutely.
There could be something next year too.
Sure.
I wouldn't rule that out.
If we were to raise the tuition, is there a model out there that shows that we have a less than 80 students? Because we're putting them out of the opportunity because they financially can't afford it, or they opt not to at that point. Is there a model that says that if we raise it a certain percentage, we're going to lose some students? Because we want to keep it at the optimum 80, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's always been 80.
I couldn't estimate what that would be. The program, as far as I could tell, for the last, I don't know how many years, has always run right around the 80 number.
27 years that I've been there.
Have we ever been short of the 80 students, no matter what we?
By one, maybe by one, if somebody dropped out the day before. But we've always been at 80, and I've been here for 27 years.
So
Christine,
the risk is if we put too much of a expense increase, we could drop below the optimum amount then, right? Is that fair to say?
well, let me ask this question instead. How many applicants are we turning away a year?
Like Mike said, about five or six, as it comes down to it.
After the testing, because it's all based on the testing.
It's the
correct?
testing, it's the interview process. We have a lot of students that don't complete submission of all their paperwork, so they kind of get put in a no file because they didn't follow through. So then we will always have a lot of people that will kind of last minutes try to scurry and get themselves out of that pile. But it is based on the testing. The testing is the biggest portion, and usually only a third of the people that take the test pass. It's that hard. So that's what we're working with. And we've been very fortunate to always fill with 80 and then have a little bit of extra on the side. We've been very, very lucky, very fortunate.
Now, of the other school, and I'm sorry, Kempton, I know I interrupted you. Please forgive me.
Right.
Of the other school districts that offer this LPN program, are they all filling up at 100% as well?
It's too early to say that.
Not for next year, for like all the other years preceding this year.
No, we're the second highest in the state as far as amount of students in the state.
How about filling up? Because Shawshene doesn't take 80 students.
No.
It's sort of where
No,
we're
they
going.
take
They might
40
take
something.
40.
Yeah, 40 something.
So do they max out their number every year?
I can't tell you that. I know this year they only took 17 because, because of COVID and trying to get placement into nursing homes and stuff, and they just said it wasn't worth filling up or even having a full class this year.
When was the last time we had a price increase?
The last time I think it was about 3 years ago.
How much was that for?
That was, my God, was something, used to be maybe 5,500 and we went up to 6,500. And then I think it was like 8,200 and then we went up to the 95 and then we added the 10.5, which never existed before. And
Okay, so
that
we're up
didn't
about $1,000 in
our 80.
district. Did it go up about $1,000 across the board? I remember we had a meeting.
Yep.
And the out of district sort of got tweaked up a little bit.
Yes, they did,
Yeah,
a
Right?
lot.
It got tweaked up.
By a
And we're
lot.
still getting a lot of out of district students.
Yes, we have 26 out of district and 12 out of state.
Wow. Is that the norm?
Yes,
Really?
yep. Usually
26 and
50%
12, so
of the
we get
program
42.
is in district and the rest is out of district.
And that would be why we're, you said we were number 2 or something?
So we have
As far
42
as-
As far as the amount of seats to fill, yes. So other schools only have 60 seats or maybe 24 seats. It varies across
I'm
the
just
state.
wondering if it's because of all the out of district, is there that much, you know, I don't know what the proper word is. Is there that many? Obviously, we have to turn away from those would be out of district versus in district.
We would turn away out of district?
No, I mean,
Is there a
You-
priority,
you-
Christine, for in-district
Yeah.
versus out of
Yes, we
district?
try to get a certain number. Around 44 is our goal for in-district. And then we let the chips fall where they may.
okay,
But I mean, we have students coming from Lynn, Mass.
really?
Yes.
So,
Do they have a program over at Lynn Tech?
No, no.
Is there a perception out there amongst the employer? I'm assuming that nurses don't have any difficulty finding a job. Is that correct?
Correct.
There is a high demand for them. Is there a perception from the employer side that Greater Lowell offers a higher quality education?
Yes.
So you're actually, if they were paying a premium, they have a better opportunity for a higher salary or a choice of employment?
We have a,
We have a reputation as
yes, we have a
being
very good
sought
reputation.
after, right?
Yes.
And I guess it comes down to what we think about, do we want to be in the middle of the pack, on the low end? I don't see that we really want to be on the high end of all these for tuition, for expenses.
Well, we appear to be the envy of a lot of.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
they're driving to us.
And if you're the envy, maybe you could charge a slight premium. It doesn't sound like it's going to hurt that much. And maybe what they're recommending might be a viable option because that puts us pretty much in the middle of the pack. And we're still offering a premium education based on the perception and the skill set that we're producing. I don't know, maybe.
Go ahead, Lee.
I just got a couple of questions. So the only reason why we're going to increase the price is because
Sorry.
the ratio went down from 10 to 1 to 5 to 1, so we had to double on the clinical side.
Yep.
Okay, so Mike, from what I'm gathering, you're telling me we can eat the $70,000 next year?
Yep.
It's not a problem at all, and we can revisit this, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so the last 3 years, I'm looking at the ratios. Option 1 sliding, right? I call it sliding because right now, I'm going to call it 50-50 on the 80 students because it's 42-38, we're right there. Can we call it 50-50? Okay, so it's basically a sliding scale by what you did.
Yep.
So if the in-district goes down, out-of-district and out-of-state go up because you just said there's no preference. It depends on schools, correct? Okay, so if the in-district slides down, the in-district kids will end up paying more than the out-of-district, out-of-state kids. Right? Right now, my next question is, do we have the ratio the last 3 years?
It was very similar. At least
Okay,
the
so
last
basically
couple.
we're at 50-50 every year?
Yes. Yes,
So-
we're always in the 40-plus range for the in-district.
Okay, so that's basically, we'll call it 50/50, right? I mean, so I guess I would like to make a motion just to, for the 121, you know what I mean, going forward, to revisit it. Because we're gonna have to we have to take the 121 anyway, because it doubled on the clerical side, see what I mean? I don't want the $70,000.
Wait and see attitude on the.
Yeah, because I don't, right now, everybody's struggling, and I don't wanna put the burden on the students, and if the last 3 years you both are telling me it's 50/50, and I'm looking at this, the way, Mike, you have it, it's very fair on option one, right across the board. If you look at the price increase, it's pretty fair to all three.
I don't want to burden our students from Lowell,
Right.
Drayton, or Tingsboro, so I have a different thought on this. So
Okay.
before you make your motion, let's sort of have a little discussion.
That's fine, but looking down through it, if we do the 6,500 on option two, I think we're gonna put the burden back on them. I don't think we're gonna get that many in-state, out-of-state if we're gonna not double, but if you're gonna up 5,000 and on out-of-district and out-of-state, I don't think they're gonna come. Maybe I'm mistaken here, but we could end up losing, we get a cushion of 5 to 6 every year, you're saying?
Let's look at option 3 for a second, may I?
Yeah, good.
Thank you. Option 3, if we went for the 121, instead of it being 2387 increase, it would be a 1512 increase across the board, okay? So I think, based on proposals, Mr. Getchier, I think I'd like to propose that the in-district students go from $6,500 to $7,500. And then we put the rest of the burden on the out-of-district and the out-of-state. Our in-district students still get somewhat of a benefit. And let's be real, living in the
That's sort of what the
Inner city?
University of Lowell does too.
right, living in Lowell area, it's sort of, it's a little more difficult to make rents and pay mortgages and such like that, and take care of your children.
So I'm clear, so essentially, we're just gonna, I'm gonna up 1,000, so there's 900.
Say it again, sir?
So we're gonna up it to 7,500 for in-student, in-district.
Yes,
On option one, we're looking at 1,900. So we're gonna go 450 on each out-of-district and out-of-state.
that's correct.
I'm fine with that. Okay.
It would be
That's-
closer to like 1,000 in district and 2,000 out of district, roughly. Using that 50-50 ratio math again
Yes,
is roughly what you're proposing.
yes.
I'll work out the actual numbers after the fact.
Right.
Next question is, does that affect, because we didn't do any modeling to see if we're gonna keep it at the 80 students, because the budget's set on 80 students.
Yep. So it's another place where that cushion comes into play. We'll have this same conversation in May or June timeframe next year. Probably get it to you a little bit earlier so that as we're moving into the summer, preparing the literature for next year, we can have the talk earlier. But we will know at least
Yeah.
by June. Will you know the enrollment roughly for next year?
Yep, the last entrance exam is in April, so I would know by June.
But by
So-
June, we could roughly model it based on the enrollment and the anticipated admissions.
Based on what they're proposing right now, it sounds like we'll have enough in the budget that we're not gonna be at a deficit.
We might be at a deficit for the operating for the year, but we do have reserves in the account from previous good years that we could eat into.
So we're allowed to have reserves that carry over?
Yep. You could.
And how much is in that account right now,
That's
roughly?
about 400,000.
All right, it's no brainer.
So I think even with the more modest increase in June, we'll have better information based on the new number potentially, and then at that point, if it looks like the enrollment drops out, we can adjust for that.
I think that's a good idea.
This has been a highly sought-after program in all the years that I've been here. Christine, you've done a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jill, I know you've been right behind her, assisting her in this and assisting everybody in everything. And I think with the reputation this program has, we're going to be hard pressed to have less students apply based on the costs. So
Yeah, we opened, I opened up the registration page for the entrance exams. And for our first entrance exam, which is December 12th, within a few days, 12 people already signed up for just that particular date. And then, then there's a date in January and 2 in February and March and everything else. But they're coming in. The applications are coming in fast and furious to take the test.
Okay, so based on this proposal, I'm not sure if we're talking about option A, B, or C, or 1, 2, or 3 is how Mike has them. So again, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we sort of have a mathematical
Yep, so we're talking
equation
about,
figured out.
we're talking about moving in district to 7,500, which given the current enrollment would be about 42,000. So the
That's a
rest of the
30%, right?
So the rest of the 79,000 gets divided amongst the other 38 projected students for
Which
the
is
out of
60.
district and out of state, which
Which is essentially
put
about
us-
$1,000 more.
puts us right at
Even?
like
Is
that
it
1,000 in, 2,000 out, 2,000 out of state and out of district.
Okay.
Can I just ask, Superintendent, you have any comments or concerns?
No, I do agree. We're looking at option 3, from what I'm saying. Are you saying it's even with the other two?
It's more
or-
of an option.
It's a hybrid.
It's more of an option one,
One.
adjusted down for the 121,000. That'll put us pretty much, I think, what we're talking about here.
So then it's not even across the out of
It's not a
district
flat
and out of
across the
state.
board.
Okay.
In district takes a lower increase.
I agree with
and
that.
then out of district and out of state take on roughly 2/3 to.
I like it.
Yeah,
Equal?
1/3.
Yeah, it's
Of the cost.
2/3, 1/3.
Yep.
Okay. So
Are we maxed out as far as enrollment?
Yeah.
And if we were to lose students because of the increase from one area, would we still be able to max out the enrollment?
That's tough to say.
Do we turn away students?
Only a few.
Only,
Yeah, I think so.
only a few.
she's saying a handful a year.
You gotta see if it
Anywhere
works.
between 5 and 8 is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so the program would still be more or less full.
I'm sure.
If
or-
things are
Based on
going,
years
if the way
past.
things are going still right now, yep. And the phone calls and like I said, the registering for the entrance exam that, is starting in December. They're already anxious to get going.
And the one thing over the years that I've noticed is that we never really even advertise the program.
No.
We do something in the newspaper once or twice a year, but other than that, we've never really tried to recruit students into this program. It's been word of mouth, and it's been filled up. You said you've been here 27 years, for all that time.
Yep.
It's a highly sought after program. I don't know that we are going to lose numbers based on this.
It seems as though the program's gotten high praise over its tenure.
Yeah.
To the point that there hasn't been a problem as far as enrollment, so.
And the risk is though, sometimes if you have the lower tuition in district, we may have fewer students coming from outside because they may opt for another program and that skews the budget.
Well,
But that's a good thing, I guess, right? We want to keep it here.
I know that's how universities do it as far as in town here versus out of state as far as enrollment. It sounds like a good way of fairness for the immediate district. It's a wait and see, but based on the numbers, what I've seen over the 27 years, I say give it a shot.
Okay. Do we need a motion?
We do.
Okay.
So is that gonna change? How it's written up?
Yes.
So I have a motion to increase the overall expenses for the LPN program to $121,000 starting calendar year 21-22. With that being, having cost increases to in-district students of $1,000 over the current cost, and the out-of-district students to have an increase to sustain the rest that's needed.
Inclusive of out-of-state students and out-of-district.
Beautiful.
Mike, this won't have any effect on the rest of our budget.
Nope, this program actually operates self-sustained on its own, so this isn't something that's going to affect any other program within the building.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. O'Hare?
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes, on the overall, yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Mike.
Christine.
Thanks.
The next item on my agenda is I'll be seeking approval to amend the current snow day policy to allow for a remote learning day to take place during our hybrid learning model when weather conditions or power outages dictate a change in the normal opening of the school day. We will continue with our 2-hour delayed opening and early dismissal. The benefit of this is in order to minimize loss of instruction time.
Roll call.
Motion.
Why do we still need the delay? If they're working from home?
Well, I said during our hybrid model.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Motion.
By Mr. Bahu, second by Mr. Bahu.
Mr. O'Hare?
And we
Let's
do,
vote.
yeah, and we do have students in the building.
Go ahead.
Mr. O'Hare?
Mr. O'Hare?
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
The next item on the agenda is to discuss revisions to the fall reopening plan. I'd like to begin with the first revision, which is on page 39 regarding a change to the definition of a close contact, which is now, should be as follows. All students and staff members who were within 6 feet of an infected person for a cumulative total of 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period. The infectious period begins 2 days prior to symptoms onset, or for asymptomatic patient, 2 days prior to test specimen collection until the time the patient is isolated. That's a very big change in the definition of a close contact. The next revision is on page 40 and involves a change to the public health metric, which now takes into account the population size of a community, in addition to the positive COVID cases per 100,000 residents and the percent positivity rate, in order to determine a color code or a category. You have a package of the new chart in your, you have a copy of the new chart in your package. For the city of Lowell to be categorized as being in the red, with a current population size of 112,626 individuals, it would need to have an average of 10 or more cases per 100,000 and a positivity rate greater than or equal to 4. That's what puts us in the red, and that is the difference now with the metric. The next revision is on page 40 and 41. And this revision has to deal with interpreting the metric. Initially, communities designated gray, green, or yellow are now expected to have students learning fully in person, if feasible. A hybrid model should only be used if there is no other way to meet health and safety requirements. Schools in red communities should implement hybrid models while maximizing in-person learning time for high-need students. In those communities with the highest COVID-19 caseloads and test positivity rates, DESE and DPH will work with them to develop and implement customized strategies to reduce in-school health risks, and to make a determination on the need for fully remote learning. Fully remote instructional models should be implemented only as a last resort in classroom, schools, or districts where there is a suspected in-school transmission or a significant municipal outbreak. Reopening should occur after appropriate mitigation strategies have been implemented as determined in consultation with the local Board of Health, DPH, and DESE. So those are the revisions to the reopening plan. Currently, we are in the fully remote instructional model because we have a significant municipal outbreak in the city of Lowell. Based on the public health report that was just released earlier this evening, the city of Lowell is now at 64.2, up from 42.1 last week, we're still in the high risk category. And our positivity rate also increased from 6.45 to 8.85 positivity. And those are the changes to the handbook. To the reopening plan. And I need approval for those changes to be added to the reopening plan.
I have one question on the color coded metric.
Mm-hmm.
On the far right, yellow and red, over 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Over 10 average cases out of 100,000, or a 4% or over 4% positivity rate. And the red says over 10 average cases per 100,000 and a 4% positivity rate.
Mm-hmm.
Is this taken from the state, or is this our own personal?
This is taken from the state.
This is what the state, so the state is looking at over 10 per 100,000 and a 4% positivity rate to be color-coded red.
Correct.
Therefore,
with a population size over 10,000. Am I right looking at that? I'm sorry.
was it 100,000?
Over 50,000.
Over 50,000, sorry. No.
So my question becomes, is if we are over 10 cases per 100,000 average, and our positivity rate is less than 4%, does that mean we are not color-coded red?
I can't say for sure. I'd like to see it first. But I would say that in order to be red, you would need to be over 10 and over 4. So if you went below a 4% positivity rate, I would say then you would move to a yellow.
Then
Okay.
greater than 10 average cases. So you
The
need
red
both
says
to stay in
and.
the red.
You need both
Yes,
and.
you need both
You
to
need
stay
both
in the
and,
red.
yes.
Correct.
Yes. Did you want to say something, Mr. Getchia?
No, I'm not positive it's mathematically possible to be over 10 and not over 4%. I think that's why it's here. You know what I mean? If we're over 10, I think we're going to be over the positivity rate of 4%.
Well, the positivity rate is based on 1,000 people testing. There's 40 people that have it.
Number of tests.
4%. 4%. If it's 3.5%, we're at a lower number. Okay.
Yeah, we're in agreement.
I make a motion to pass the
Second.
change.
Roll call.
Mr. O'Hare?
Go ahead.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
So I just want to add something that occurred this week. We were informed earlier this week that we were one of the 134 schools in the state who will be receiving the Bionex testing, which is a rapid COVID-19 test for students and staff who show symptoms while in school. I don't know if it was over a month ago that districts received a letter from the state asking who was interested. And we met as a group and we decided as a school that we thought it would be something that we would definitely be interested in to help us to be able to get students back to school and to help us to do contact tracing quicker than we can do now. So we're happy to say that we were informed this week that we will be getting those, being able to administer those tests here at school. We're just in the beginning stages. There's a lot of paperwork and forms that we need to complete, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to start this sometime in December.
And only a nurse can administer the test?
Correct.
Will
will be
we have
done.
a certain testing room?
It will be done in our COVID area here at school.
Congratulations.
Thank you, that's a great job, thank you.
You're welcome.
I already did. Thanks. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Report of the business manager. Again.
I just have one item on my own agenda this evening, and that is just an update on the FY20 and 21 budgets. So I've officially closed out FY20 and submitted to the Department of Education our end-of-year report and the Department of Revenue our balance sheet. And throughout the year, we finished favorably financially, returning about $114,049.75 to the excess and deficiency balance, and carrying forward a balance in the net school spending money or number to help offset increases due to the pandemic in the current fiscal year. Our excess and deficiency balance went from $1,656,461 at the beginning of FY20, and we're going to be closing, or we closed FY20 at $1,770,511. And this also includes the use of the excess and deficiency for the football field lighting that took place in FY20 as well. These numbers haven't been completely audited by our internal auditors and or the Department of Revenue yet, so we might have some changes here and there. But I'm pretty confident in what was submitted in these numbers, which is why I wanted to present them as a positive news. Looking toward FY20, the FY21 year, which we're in, but as the legislature has been going through the budget process and getting further into there, the numbers that were presented in August that we used to build the budget that was approved in August have been holding steady, except for a slight increase in the transportation reimbursement number. But because of the setup of the transportation revolving fund last year, that number could still be fluid throughout the year, and then we're able to return that against the assessment for any of our member communities should that number finish the year higher next year. So there's no action necessary at this time, and everything looks to be well in line and holding steady for the next year. And with that said, we're already on to FY22. Looking at putting together a budget, starting our meetings, I think Monday morning or Monday afternoon of the upcoming week with department heads and chairs, and reviewing, again, the capital plans and advisory minutes and making sure that everything that's been brought forth is addressed as effectively as possible and has a plan in place for funding and taking care of any programmatic needs. So that's it for me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great news.
Old business? New business. I'd like to update the committee that the facilities naming committee meeting scheduled for this week has been postponed until next Tuesday, November 24th. Next, I need a motion. Can I have a motion to approve the 2% salary increase for the 2021 school year for the business administrator? Motion
So moved.
seconded by Mr. Lemay. Roll call.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes,
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. I need a motion to approve the 3-year contract for the superintendent director.
Motion.
So moved.
Mr. O'Hare, seconded by Mr. Getchia.
Mr. O'Hare?
Mr. O'Hare,
Mr.
yes?
O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. I need a motion to approve the 3-year contract for the 20 to 23 for the assistant superintendent principal, Mr. Lemay.
Yep.
Seconded by Mr. Bahu.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. Executive session, need a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws 30A, Section 21A of 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Local 1404 maintenance employees and security personnel. Any votes taken after dependent upon discussion and may need a vote. Yes,
Wait,
Is that for this week?
Mr. Moran? I think there was a committeeman motion on the floor. Mr. Getchia had made a motion.
Before the executive session.
So Mr. Getchia had made a motion prior to us going into executive session.
We had a motion before the.
We get the motion before this.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, we can take this out of order. We can approve the executive session.
Right? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine with me. That's fine.
You want to go to executive session first?
Yeah, we already started, might as well executive session.
Hold on, hold on. We can just approve the executive session.
And then do the
And then,
motion.
and then we'll do the motion,
Okay.
and then we can take a 5-minute recess and go into executive session.
All right, I'm sorry.
Perfect.
That's fine. That's okay.
I jumped ahead.
That's okay, it happens.
Seeing as you're running the meeting, Mr.
So do we want to
Bowden.
do a motion? So do the motion for executive session?
Yeah, you can vote now, yeah.
Lee?
Yeah, motion.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. 5-minute recess.
We're gonna do the motion
We'll
next.
do the motion.
Lee's motion.
All right, go ahead. A motion was made by Mr. Getchia to have the school reopen when safe to do so with all technical shop week classes held in person 4 days per week and all academic classes held remotely, as well as all personnel working in person with the school discussion. Mr. Getchia.
I mean, the motion speaks for itself. The last couple of months I've been saying technical. And, I've been advocating for the technical side. I just think with the way it's trending right now with Lowell at 64.2, when it's safe to open back up, even with kids in the classroom 4 to 6 in the enclosed area, I think we can control shop, not control it, but at least do a controlled environment. It's a lot easier in shop where it's open. And it'll limit the kids from walking from math to science, going from room to room. And I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, because I've been advocating for shop.
Sure, I'd like to call Mr. Barton up as well, so we can talk a little bit about this with you. I think it would be best to reformulate a reopening task force to really look at this, and to be able to say right now, if it is possible to bring more students back in the technical area. I would be hesitant to say that right now. I think there's a lot of things that we need to look at to be able to do that. We know that we can do hybrid B, which is 50% of the students 2 days a week. But what you're asking, what I'm hearing, the motion is you want 100% of the week here at school.
Well, I'm open to something different. What I'm saying is that basically the kids, the 50% hybrid that we proposed, it still has academics in the school. Correct?
On their academic week.
Right, and I think
Yes.
we need to keep them at home. Because even with 4 to 6 to 8 kids in a classroom enclosed, some of the classrooms don't have windows. I went here. Matt, I know you went here. They still have to leave that classroom to go to another classroom, to go to another classroom. At least in shop, they're in a controlled environment. They're in a controlled area. They're in one area. And I guess that's what I'm getting at. And the task force, I love it. It's a great, that's what we should be doing because I'm just watching, I don't want to call it a train wreck at Lowell, but I'm watching Lowell. And when it's safe to do so, I want to roll right in. Let's go.
So as I said, we did put up a posting
If I
to,
could,
Mr. Chairman, I think someone.
Matt, go ahead.
Matt,
yes,
did you want to speak?
yeah, if I could just chime in really quick, on what Lee put on for motion. I agree with Lee 100%. The staff, Jill and her staff, Mike, everybody's doing, a fantastic job through a horrible situation. But, when we come back in January, I would like to see if you put that board back together or the, what you just called it. I think we need to focus on hands-on learning, like the shops, getting these kids back in there as fast as we can and as many as we can, just for shop. Your traditional learning, math, science, English, all those things, we can still do that virtually, but I think if we can get these kids, we got to get these kids back in the building, especially for hands-on learning.
so I completely understand what you're saying, Mr. Sheehan. And I think that's why Mr. Barton and I spoke, and we said it would be important to get the task force together to brainstorm and think outside of the box, because there is the factor of the freshman exploratory, which is also a big part of this. So we will, like I said, we put the posting up. We will be getting that group of individuals together, and we will be looking at how to get more students into the building for hands-on learning.
Matt? Mr. Sheehan?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm good. Like I said, I appreciate everything that Miss Davis and Mr. Barton are doing, and the entire staff. It's nothing against anybody in that building. I just can't stress the fact enough. I would love to get these kids, whatever it takes for us, the school committee or the staff, just to get the students back into the building specifically for the hands-on learning. Whatever we can do, I'm all for it.
Right. A big piece of that is the social distancing piece and the size of some of the shops and the number of students in the shops, which we are committed to looking at and really committed to really looking at a deeper level to see how we can bring in more students. And again, also not forgetting the exploratory program, which is critical for our incoming freshmen. Because when you say academics all at home, that means that the freshmen would not be coming into the building, and freshman exploratory, we believe is critical because they came here to explore a technical area. So we're really going to be thinking outside the box of how to achieve both of those things. How do we get more of the upperclassmen into the building for their technical programs, at the same time trying to provide an exploratory experience for our freshmen?
I agree. The freshmen are important, and I think that's a piece of and you and I have talked about this a couple times. That's absolutely important because I don't want to lose this freshman class.
So that's what we really need this group together to figure out.
Right, and
how we can
that's
do
why
that.
I'm glad the task force and
Yeah.
I just want to go more shop. I guess that's what the motion is, more shopping.
Yes.
We can whittle the days down. I understand 1,200 kids in here, shop only, right out of the gate, it's going to be a little, obviously.
Yep. So we're absolutely willing to to get a team together to really look at it, because we do agree that, the hands-on portion is important.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is I totally understand the thrust of the motion, and I agree to get, as many kids back as we can, particularly with an emphasis on the shop. As Ms. Davis said, and we've talked, extensively about the challenges of the freshman exploratory program, is something that I think a lot of creative minds are going to have to put ourselves together and figure that out. And I think the only other thing that I would add is, particularly on the sophomore year, when they're on their technical week, they take mathematics. So we would have to look very creatively at how to figure that out, because during their shop week schedule, every day they're scheduled into mathematics. So we'd have to just literally figure out how to continue to do that in a shop environment.
grade 10 students.
Yeah, there's 20 sections of math, and junior year we'd have to figure out not only phys ed but health sections. So it's just a matter of, I think, looking at the schedule very carefully and talking to the groups to negotiate or make some concessions.
Another
creatively,
thing,
basically.
another thing to think about would be our high-risk students. Having no time in the building for academics could be a struggle for those individuals.
But, I mean, they're struggling.
No, I
I
think you're
understand
gonna let
that.
them in
They're
on that
struggling now, but get back
Yeah,
to the
they are
sophomores.
struggling.
That's why in the motion I said all personnel working in the building within the school. So those sophomores right now, if they're in shop, they can go remote from the school with the teacher, right? They get the Chromebook, they can just jump on and do math like they would at home in the shop.
Yeah, it's just a matter of supervising.
Yeah,
those sections. Right.
But I mean, it'd be the same thing as supervised, how we do it at home.
Well, there's
how do we do it
also
at home?
there's also a size ratio in a classroom too.
Well, I'm not saying bring them to class, they can stay in the shop and go on the Wi-Fi and do like they do at home.
Right.
Like I said, we just have to think outside the
Right.
box. I'm just trying to get more hands-on learning. The freshmen, like when I was here, my freshman was shop week, I was on shop. And we did the exploratory that way. Maybe we have to try to look to see if we can get back to that, where, they're going, because my take is, and I could be a great mathematician, and let's get to Paul, because you taught at culinary. I could break down a measurement. It doesn't mean I can cook. And these kids are at home breaking down, flour, and we don't know if they can cook. They're not in there doing it. I mean, I could break down, I could read a ruler. That doesn't mean I can cut a pipe. It's just something I've been advocating for, and it's just, we just have to think outside the box.
Yeah.
You guys are doing a great job.
We're trying to, we will try to definitely
Yeah,
figure
we're
out.
definitely committed to
We
it. It's just a
totally-
matter of it's creative
Yeah, no,
scheduling,
Yeah.
and some things are going to have to give, basically.
So, like I
get it
said,
done.
I
the
figure we have
posting,
enough time to do it right here.
the posting is up, and we'll get that team together immediately. Yes, Mr. Brown?
Mr. Moore?
Good?
Let me ask, I know that, we're not the only vocational school in Massachusetts. I also know, have you been able to speak to how the other schools, what they're doing in respect to shops and such like that?
I think it depends on the size of the other schools. It depends on a lot of things. I think the size matters.
Have you been speaking to them? Like, are they having
Directly,
shop?
no.
Is
I
Shawsheen-
did look at, Shawsheen right now is closed.
Okay, were they having shop prior?
They're half of our size, so they're bringing in 600 students a day as we were.
And they were half our size, so they were bringing 50% of the students?
Yes.
Okay. And how about the other vocational schools in the area, maybe a Whittier Tech? Are they using shop? Are they at 50% shop? And
I'm not sure what Whittier
hybrid?
is doing at the moment in regards to that. I know they leave at 12:30 every day, and they don't eat lunch in school.
Okay.
They're also only at 1,200, which is half of our size.
Right.
And there were a number of, if I can jump in.
Sure, please do.
There were a number of schools that were following the model that we had proposed or we had followed as well, to bring 1/4 of students in or 50% of the students in. They were smaller schools, but there were quite a few schools
So Greater New Bedford is doing what we did with 3 days. Our hybrid B is a 2-day. They're doing a 3-day.
Sure, because but like my fellow committeeman has indicated, kids aren't learning how to cut pipe. They're not learning how to go ahead and chop wood. They're not learning how to use tools correctly, and they may end up graduating Greater Lowell Tech and not really be prepared for the workforce. So I think
Well,
this
we're
is
going to do the best that we can under the current circumstances of being in a global pandemic to provide them with the best education that we could, whether that be remote, whether that be in person, with their health and safety as a priority.
we understand that, but hands-on for a vocational school is very important.
Absolutely.
So you say you have a task force. How many people on that task force?
Like I said, we just put up a posting to reformulate the task force. For the reopening plan, there was 60 individuals on the task force.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Could we possibly have a couple of school committee members on that task force to go ahead and be engaged in that conversation and have a good feeling for it? Would that be something that you would consider doing?
If you felt the need that you needed to be on the task force, I think you hired me to do a job and to lead a school and lead a team. I'd like to say that I did that to reopen the school, and I think I can continue to do that with a team of people.
Thank you, and you're doing a great job. But this is not about me. This is about the school committee. At the end of the day, we do take the votes, that you kindly and work hard enough to give us. However, if you had us on something like that and be able to put our 2 cents in, I think it would be a lot more comfortable for all of us. I'm not even sure that I would want to be on that task force, but I'm just thinking maybe a couple of school committee members may, which could be fair for us to engage not just with the task force, but also with the school committee and share any information that we have with each other and not put it all on you.
I think as a school leader, that is my responsibility. I don't feel like you're putting it all on me. I feel it's my responsibility to lead the school and lead the task force. I guess I feel strongly about that. I feel as an administrative team, as teachers, as support staff, as custodians, the 60 people that got together and worked very hard this summer to reopen the building. I think we did a good job to do that, and I would hope that you can trust us to do the same. But I'm hearing that you would like to be a part of that.
This is not about trust. This is about putting in our own views and hearing your views, not just your views, but the overall task views, committee's views, so that we can all be on the same page working together. Is this something that doesn't seem to work for you?
I think what maybe Jill is thinking is that she understands that the committee here really wants the kids back in school. That's the goal that we're giving Jill as a administrator and to Mike. We want the kids back in school. We want the shop kids back. We want the exploratory back. That's a number one priority for this committee here. So we've set the expectation and goal. Now, hopefully Jill and Mike can bring that back to the panel that they're going to put together. And then hopefully they come back with several options for us to then weigh in on at that particular time. Sometimes it's difficult for us as an outsider to micromanage our administrative staff. And I think that may be a challenge, although maybe what we need is a little bit more communication from the administration while they're going through this assessment or panel. And at that point, we can kind of weigh in, maybe give some guidance. How do you feel about that, Joe?
Sure.
But that way we can be involved, but that comes through the communication through the administration. I think from a committeeman's point of view, I would like to see a lot of options available to us to try to get these kids. And they know what our goal is to get the kids back in school. Lee's made it very clear. You've made it very clear. I don't think there's one person in this room that doesn't want the kids back in school, but we have to kind of balance it. And it's a tough thing, especially when our community's different than another community. We're in the red and the high risk. We can't. Our hands are pretty much tied until that number changes.
Sure, and
Yeah.
I agree with that.
So I think that's where our whole
But the
and
last,
that's where the administration, because
So
they're
just for
trying to make it fit.
understanding, Mr. Bajo, I think at every school committee meeting we had where we discussed reopening and different options, I was always open to feedback from the committee in regards to suggestions, to ideas, to thinking outside the box.
well, there hasn't been a lot, movement considering, our school is closed and such like that.
So-
And I understand that we are in the red and we will be in the red for a period of time. We may even be closed, through Christmas break. Of course, that's expected almost at this current time. And Mr. Giggy, and I take exception, I'm not trying to micromanage.
No.
I think all I'm trying to do is identify, what I'm hearing at the task force meeting, so that maybe I can interpret it and say, oh, okay, now I sort of have a better understanding, and not keep putting it on the superintendent, saying why, can't we? Is it ever going to happen? When? I just think that would be fair for a couple of school committee members to be on. I don't even know that I would speak at something like that. And I don't even know, again, that I would want to be on it, but I just think it would be fair if we did have an opportunity to sit on that, a couple of us, at least that way to sort of just get a feel for how this whole event takes place. So, not about micromanaging at all, but thank you for that.
I just think that maybe what we can do is have a little bit more communication from the administration. They can come back to us and say, this is what's being discussed at that time, before they even formulate the options. Maybe that would be satisfactory. I don't know. It's a tough call. I think everyone here wants to really know what's going on, because we want these kids back as soon as possible. And I agree that it's important. And I think Lee's admirable bringing forward the motion, and it's just so difficult right now to even, because we did have some discussion about the space in the room, and you're 4 foot and you're 6 foot, and if you bring it down to 3, maybe we can there's a lot of variables that are involved, and I'm not sure that I comprehend them all, because I don't understand all of the restrictions. My goal is to have that kid in the classroom learning, and I think and as long as we impress upon the administration, that's what our goal is. Hopefully they can implement it as quickly and satisfactorily to all of us. And I think what you're asking for is we want a little bit more communication or involvement, just so that we're not presented with just 3 options at the end. Maybe we can lend some creativity to the solution. Is that what I'm hearing? You want to be able to provide some creativity?
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair summary, as well as, can have a more open communication than just, option A, B, and C.
Exactly.
Like we just did with the LPN program, there was a little bit of different, types of discussion and such like that. We came up with some type of fair solution, I think, for everybody involved, and that's all I'm asking for, so.
Yeah, and I think it's admirable. I just think maybe we can try to tailor maybe a little bit more involvement through communication from the administration through the process, and then we can narrow it down and drill down as we get closer to reality and maybe getting the kids back in class. But right now, from what I'm seeing in that chart, it's not looking too promising in the near future, not until probably the spring of next year.
So just for understanding, we do have a reopening plan that had option hybrid A, hybrid B, right? And I understand what Mr. Gitchie is saying, and we're going to be looking into a little bit more than that hybrid B. Can we get more, is what I'm hearing.
My thing is that I take in consideration the kids that are getting lost in academics, and like I said, it's safe to do so, and I keep pointing back to the motion where all personnel are working in person in the building. If that, we know who the high-risk kids are who could get lost in academics. They're in the building. The teacher's in the building. I'm sure the shop or technical teacher, if Mr. Barton says, say, Lee's having a problem in algebra, the shop teacher's going to say, why don't you go see Curtis over in room 102. And it's still combination. What I'm trying to do is get the kids back in their hands-on, as many kids as possible. And I realize, look, we're having a discussion, and I love it. But we're not going to go anywhere until we talk to the technical teachers. We're not going to go anywhere because there's going to be families that are still going to be uncomfortable, even when school's going to be reopening. They're not going to want to send the kids. So we're not even there. And I kind of agree with Freddie. You put a committee person on the task force because it's a reopening task force. Not for us to have any input, just to be there to see where it's going. And you know, I don't even know if I have the time. I wouldn't even know if I had the time. I'm not saying, it's not micromanaging or overlooking what you're doing. Not at all. It's so everybody gets together because we're all in this together, whether we like this or not. Like it's a global pandemic. We're all in this together. And that way they're the academic teachers and I support these teachers here 1,000%. Everybody in the building's been doing a great job. We came to an agreement a week before school started with the teachers. Go to Lowell and ask them if they're in school yet. They can't even get through the door. And I like to think we have I know you have a great relationship with the unions. I know you do. And that's what I'm getting at. I'm not saying for us to have input, just to be there to listen to see, okay, where are we at? You know, because we're not going to know. Maybe the technical teachers say, yeah, I'm comfortable with 4 to 6 feet because they can maneuver them in the shop. And Mike, you're right. We don't know how many are in electrical. I'm looking at the co-op. We have one unfilled job. So who knows? You're going to look at the co-op. We're going to have to do a survey to the families. We're going to have to sit down and have that discussion. And we're 6 weeks out from at least getting back into the school. Let's be brutally honest. We have Thanksgiving. We have Christmas. I don't think we're coming back before January, was it 4th? That's the best case scenario. So it's just starting the process. I'm sorry if you took offense to Freddie's. I didn't. It was kind of like, it's a task force reopen. Throw everybody at the table to listen and throw out ideas. Ultimately, you two, you're making the plan and we're going to vote on the policy. Just like we did last time. There was no back and forth of fighting. And I agree, and I have
So we didn't make the plan, a team of people made a plan.
Well, that's my point, but you guys were there directing, throwing the ideas out there, and I'm all for it. I'm happy there's a task force. I mean, I don't even know if I'd have the time to sit on it anyway, but I think just having somebody, you know, whoever wants to be on it.
It is a commitment, a big commitment.
Right, and just to have people on it to listen, to throw ideas out there. It's not, ultimately, you guys are going to bring forth the policy. We vote on it. You guys run the day-to-day, not us. And I see your side, and I see Freddie's side. But I just think having somebody else there in the committee, it shows that we're all working together. I mean, I don't think it's micromanaging.
Okay.
Because we're not going to say to you, Jill, we're going to go this way. It doesn't work that way. There's, 16 other people on the task force? 18,
Well,
20?
50 last time.
Right, so it's 50 collective.
We hope to get a lot this time, too.
But it's 50 collective ideas. It's not just us saying this is what we're going to do. So I see where Freddie's coming from. If someone wants to sit on it, sit on it. It's a reopening task force to reopen.
Absolutely.
Ready to move on?
Well, we have a motion on the table. So the question is, would you like to, Mr. Gettier, withdraw that motion, or would you like a vote?
Was there a second?
No, for the sake of argument, I'll be happy to second.
Well, I mean, we have a task force in place. I mean, if someone wants to volunteer to jump on the task force, that's up to Jill, and I'll withdraw the motion. I mean, I'm glad we had the conversation, but I think we need to go technical first and ask the teachers if they're willing to do that, or whoever's in the task force. Let's start there and think outside the box for the freshmen, the sophomores with the math. I understand that, but we have Wi-Fi in the building. I don't see the problem with them in shop going on like they would be at home. I wouldn't think the shop teachers would have a problem. Put them off to some spot in the shop where no one's here, jump on. But I mean, like you said, we have to think outside the box. Like, obviously, having 1,200 kids in here right off the bat in January that's not feasible. But I'd like to see, 3 days, 2 days. Wednesday's still a clean day. 3 days, and we'd have to split the numbers, do a survey, see. So I guess the motion, I guess I'm ahead of
So
myself.
we
but-
can get two and two right now. We planned for 2 and 2. What I'm hearing you say is you want more, and that's what we're gonna try to do.
If it's possible. I mean, look,
Yeah,
that's
Yeah,
it. And
we're committed to looking
We're
at it.
committed to looking
There's
at
no
it.
question in my mind, at least in,
yeah.
certainly, I think our minds.
We've been
that
talking about it.
We're probing this extensively. Turning it over and turning it over to look at multiple different scenarios. And I think it was just the thought that to make this happen, it is going to require probably, in my estimation, some real creative scheduling, some concessions in different areas that need to be presented to this task force in order to make it happen. And I don't feel one way or the other. I think it's just a case of having examined it pretty thoroughly and continuing to examine it. It's just a matter of doing that with the reopening a task force and then putting all of these different scenarios on paper and looking at, basically, to use the term, where things shake out in terms to make this happen
so
is really what's going to happen.
When do we appoint the task force?
Well,
The
the
posting went up
posting went up-
yesterday. What day is Thursday? It went up yesterday.
So
It'll be
it's
1 week, Wednesday, the day
So you
before.
figure a week?
It goes
5
up for 5
days.
days.
Okay, and then we'll know what.
We'll put it together and we'll meet.
We'll hire
We'll
people
hire everyone
and then we'll
and
start
start
to
meeting
meet.
most likely the
Like
first
we
week
did in
of
the
December.
summer. We met
Yeah.
once or twice a week almost.
Yeah, it was
It was
very
intense.
tight.
I mean, we had a 6-week window. That's basically where we're at. I mean,
Yeah, we're telling you that we're committed to doing this.
Yeah.
We,
all right, I'll withdraw the motion.
Based on Mr. Giggy's recommendation, if you don't mind sharing some information. I know you have your Friday fill-ins for us. You let us know what's going on in the
Oh,
school.
absolutely.
If you
yes.
could let us know what's happening with this task force, maybe with some ideas that came out with.
Absolutely.
If anybody has any input, please feel free to email me so I can present some of these ideas to the task force.
Absolutely.
good idea.
Is that
Yeah,
fair?
I think that's fair. Yes.
Okay.
You
I
know
appreciate
what
that.
roadblocks you're encountering, what different solutions or options, so that we can kind of just stay involved.
No, I can keep you completely informed.
Okay.
That's
I
really good.
think that's very
Good
fair.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Reset?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we adjourn, go to executive
Oh.
session.
Yes.
Excellent.
Sorry.
Take a 5-minute break.
Yes.
Yeah, because we already voted, so we can just say.
Hold on, are we gonna have a vote? Are we gonna have come back into a public session, or can we just adjourn this meeting and go into executive
I think
session?
we have to vote on the MOA.
We have to vote on the MOA.
Modification.
Oh, there's an MOA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Need a roll call?
For medical,
Mr. O'Hare?
it's a win-win for everybody.
Still here?
Let's go.
Yeah.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yeah.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Here.
Mr. Lemay?
Yeah.
Mr. Moran?
Yeah. Okay, need a motion to accept
Motion to accept that the
approve the
district,
memorandum of agreement between the Greater Lowell Technical School Committee and the AFL-CIO State Council 93 Local 1404 maintenance employees and security personnel. And Mr. Bahu.
I'll second the
and
MOA.
Mr. Lemay. And roll call.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Mr. Sheehan?
Mr. Bahu?
yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
So,
Thank you.
So moved.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. O'Hare? Mr. O'Hare?
Judge, motion adjourned.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Set aside
Yes.
money. Tell your employer to set aside.